Yeah, yeah. Okay. Here's that way. And you can hear, read it.
Morning, gentlemen. I'm very punctual when we we got 1 minute. One or two members might come in, so I'm going to wait till then, but I just want to give you that heads up. Also, we have votes at 10:30. Subcommittee will come to order. Thank you to the witnesses for joining us today. We're here to take a closer look at the VA's National Work Queue, also known as the NWQ, which electronically manages and distributes the majority of the Veterans Benefits Administration's workload of the VA benefits claims. In March of 2013, the backlog of VA benefits claims peaked at over 600,000 claims. In response, VA created an electronic claims file system called the Veterans Benefit Management System, or VBMS, to electronically process veterans' claims. In 2016, the National Work Queue was implemented to ensure that these paperless claims were efficiently processed. The National Work Queue avoids funneling claims through a single VA regional office. Instead, the National Work Queue uses pre-programmed rules to automatically distribute claims every day to ROs across the country based on the RO's capacity to take claims more efficiently. I am pleased that the National Work Queue has largely decreased wait times for veterans waiting for decisions on their claims. Because of the VA's efforts, the backlog is half of what it was in 2013. There's still room for National Work Queue to improve, always, in its goals of efficiently processing all veterans and survivors' claims. Right now, the current system only allows the most recent VA employee who managed a claim to learn from when they have mistakenly undertaken unnecessary steps to obtain evidence. Therefore, most VA employees never are able to learn from those mistakes, and they continue to conduct unnecessary development in other veterans' claims. Although the National Work Queue has improved wait times for general types of disability compensation claims, veterans and survivors who have filed special types of claims continue to experience longer wait times for decisions. Today, we'll take a closer look at the National Work Queue's shortcomings when it comes to efficiently processing claims based on military sexual trauma and claims for survivor benefits. In October of 2023, VA attempted to address the backlog of 20,000 military sexual trauma claims by consolidating MST claims with the San Juan, Puerto Rico regional office. But since then, the backlog of MST claims has grown to more than 26,000. In reaction to this, VA designated the Roanoke Regional Office as a temporary MST special mission site effective April 1st, 2024. And it remains to be seen whether the effort will be enough to work down that extreme backlog. We have heard that this backlog was part due to the National Work Queue automated claims establishment rules failing to properly label MST claims. As a result, claims processors across the country manually relabeled claims as MST claims, resulting in a higher number of MST claims being routed to the San Juan office. There obviously aren't enough employees assigned to the San Juan office to process all these military sexual trauma claims. Further, we continue to see backlogs in survivor benefits claims. At our full committee hearing in January, we learned about how certain claims for dependencies and indemnity compensations filed by surviving spouses and surviving children are not being routed in a timely manner through the National Work Queue. Today, we will examine what steps the VA has taken and will take to address the wait times for the survivors. Every veteran and survivor has earned a timely decision on their claims. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about the National Work Queue and how it can be improved. And again, I thank you, Mr. Clark and Mr. Smith, for joining us today. I now recognize the ranking member for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Luttrell. I appreciate you holding today's hearing as part of our efforts to continue to serve our nation's veterans. For most veterans, the very first interaction they have with VA is when they file a disability claim. Once their claim is filed, it joins over 900,000 others in the national inventory. Our witnesses from the Office of Field Operations are tasked with managing the distribution and processing of these claims across the country. The National Work Queue is a tool developed by their office to manage that workload. The National Work Queue and the team managing its use have been critical to bringing veterans and survivors into VA's care, to include over 1 million PACT Act-related claims granted to date. But no IT system, no operational program is perfect. The needs of our veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors continue to evolve. The National Work Queue must evolve with them. Right now, there are over 250,000 claims that are older than 125 days. That's 200,000 veterans or survivors that have been waiting over 125 days to gain access to the benefits and services that they've earned. And unfortunately, I continue to hear from veterans and veteran service organizations and frontline VBA employees that older backlogged claims are not being prioritized, or worse yet, they're stuck in the system. We must also recognize that the administration of the National Work Queue tool does not only affect our veterans, but it affects the VBA employees that do their absolute best to carry out VA's sacred obligation. During visits to VA regional offices, we repeatedly hear the National Work Queue tool's complex routing is causing frontline VBA employees to duplicate claim development already done by their colleagues in other parts of the country. That duplicated work wastes time and puts additional strain on claims processors' abilities to meet increasingly demanding production quotas. As another unintended consequence, claims processors rarely receive feedback on errors they've made in their work. This significantly hinders the rate an employee will learn and, by effect, the overall quality of the workforce's service. To me, unnecessary deferrals and their unintended effects produce large-scale inefficiency and inequity to both your employees and customers. So today, I encourage our witnesses to recognize the need to address these key issues and to evolve National Work Queue alongside the needs of those most affected by its use. I thank you all for the work you've done, continue to do, and to ensure that we support our veterans, survivors, and their families and caregivers. And I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. Our lead witness from Veterans Affairs is Mr. Willie Clark, Deputy Undersecretary for Field Operations at the Veterans Benefits Administration. Mr. Clark is joined by Mr. Ken Smith, Assistant Deputy Undersecretary for Field Operations. I ask the witnesses, please stand. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you again for being here. Mr. Clark, you now are recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the Department of Veterans Affairs National Work Queue. I am joined today by Mr. Kenneth Smith, the Assistant Deputy Undersecretary responsible for NWQ. We could not have processed the number of claims we have and handle the increase in receipts due to the PACT Act without the National Work Queue. We could not have done so. Prior to implementing NWQ in 2016, VBA used a manual process to move claims folders between regional offices. With NWQ, claims are distributed electronically using automated rules which allow for more consistent and reliable means for distributing work, leading to improvement in customer service and efficiency, regardless of what a veteran or survivor lives. Let me give you a recent example. A 10% service-connected Minnesota veteran in his late 70s recently filed a claim for a malignant condition based on a toxic exposure risk activity. The claim was established by the Houston Regional Office 4 days after submission and transferred by NWQ to the Milwaukee Regional Office that evening. A Milwaukee employee developed for evidence to include ordering of examinations. The claim was marked as ready for decision, a status where VBA has a significant volume of nearly 300,000 claims that have been awaiting review for an average of 44 days. 5 days later, we received additional medical evidence which identified the veteran as terminal. The file was annotated, prompting NWQ's routing rules for terminal veterans to be reassigned back to the Milwaukee RO for priority action. On day 34, 1 day after the veteran was identified as terminal, the Milwaukee RO completed a decision to award a 100% evaluation with eligibility for dependents' educational assistance for his spouse, an increase of over $3,700 per month in disability compensation. NWQ now recalls and distributes more than 130,000 claims per day, which has led to an historic increase in output. In fiscal year FY24, as of May 31st, VBA completed more than 10,000 disability and survivor claims in a single day on 70 occasions, the first time in our history that we've accomplished this feat. Additionally, during the same period, VBA completed over 28% more claims compared to the same time last year. VA has historically centralized processing for certain claim types that require specialized handling, such as those related to mustard gas, radiation, pension, or Agent Orange exposure, or from veterans residing overseas. Centralization develops the specialized knowledge required for each of these unique workloads, thereby improving efficiency through improved consistency, quality, and employee proficiency. As an example, VBA centralized its military sexual trauma workload from 8 interim locations to the MST Ops Center, a single site led by a senior executive director to enhance organizational oversight and effectiveness. In fact, we have more resources now assigned to MST than we had at the other 8 locations combined. As these new employees are onboarded and complete the unique requirements for MST claims processing, VBA is poised to further reduce inventory and improve service delivery. We also note many times MST claims are not initially identified as an MST claim. Rather, the claim is initially identified as a mental health disorder, with MST later being identified by the examiner. This necessitates additional development, elongating the claims process. Consolidating the MST claims provides focused attention to improve timeliness and quality while remaining compassionate to the mission of serving MST survivors. While VBA is providing more benefits and service to veterans than ever before, it is clear that we still face the twin challenges of unprecedented workload and workforce growth, and we are committed to continued improvements in NWQ. Accordingly, we have modernization improvements scheduled for completion by FY 2026. In addition, our Undersecretary for Benefits commissioned an NWQ Red Team to evaluate operational and functional capabilities, and we are currently reviewing additional recommendations by the team. As always, VBA looks forward to the continued oversight provided by Congress and partnership of our stakeholders to improve service delivery. Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member Pappas, this concludes my testimony. I'm happy to respond to any questions you of the subcommittee may have.
Thank you, sir. The written statement of Mr. Clark will be entered into the hearing record. Subcommittee will stand in recess subject to call of the chair. I expect us to reconvene 10 minutes after the closing of votes. Thank you. Gentlemen, I say 10 minutes. You can give us a little latitude.
apologize. My colleague should be back in just
Oh.
a second, but we'll, yeah, sorry about that, but we'll. You're authorized, we're not, so he'll be back in a second.
That was a test, Mr. Smith. We set you up on that one. We'll bring the committee back in order. And again, we'll have a few others. Mr. McGarvey is, I'm sure, moving as fast as he. What do you say? There he is. Outstanding. I now recognize myself for 5-minute questioning, and then I'll pass it off to the ranking member. So, Mr. Clark, I'm gonna start with you, sir. As we know from the January 24 full committee hearing on survivors, National Work Queue more or less fails to route surviving children's dependency and indemnity compensation claims for processing. So they are just basically in a holding pattern in the National Work Queue for an extended period of time. Why, if you will, if you can, please answer, why do surviving children and veterans have to wait for VA to revise? From what I understand, there's a form that needs to be adjusted. And from what I understand, that's taking upwards of a couple of years before can you kind of walk me through that, sir, and tell me where we stand? And
Yes, sir. So, 21674 is the form, but I'd like to ask my colleague to answer that question, please.
okay, Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir. So in January, when we identified the problem, or when the problem was identified, we began to manually find those forms and then get them out to the Responsible Pension Management Center. We continue to do that. At this point, we've already done more than 600 of those, and we're continuing to do about 40 a week to keep that inventory down, and we can keep those children of deceased veterans enrolled in school and still receiving their benefits.
40 per, you said 40 per week, I'm sorry?
About 40 per week. That's
600 in totality. What's our gross number? You have that off the top of your head?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But our pension service is working on the form to simplify it, because right now when the child is ready to turn 18, a letter is sent to the parent 3 months before, and that sometimes causes some confusion because the child may sign the form. So we're working to revise that so that we can get both signatures on it and continue that benefit. Or, frankly, change the process altogether. Again, our pension service is working on that.
I don't know if I want to ask what changing the process altogether may look like. That may be another hearing altogether.
Yeah, I believe that that's something that we would appreciate having a discussion with staff
No problem.
about and get into further details.
Is there a time frame if we go, let's say we go the route of revising the form? Do you have a window? Do you have bookends you can give me? Give the committee, so we have a date that we're looking at. I don't want to have to revisit, when we revisit this National Work Queue, I don't want to ask this question again and say, where are we at? I want to say, why aren't we done?
So the National Work Queue is distributing these cases manually. So this isn't a National Work Queue issue. The issue with the 2 years that you stated before is a rulemaking process to change when we send the forms out and can accept signatures from the children.
This does live inside the National Work Queue, from what I understand, or it is supposed to.
Claims routing is inside the National Work Queue. We distribute the workload, but the rules for adjusting or making these decisions is controlled by the policy lane. So they're working on changes to that policy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Clark, National Work Queue only allows the most recent VA employee who made an avoidable deferral to learn from that mistake. Why doesn't the National Work Queue have the capability to ensure that all VA employees who have made an avoidable, more or less, deferral can learn from the mistakes in the past? And let me preface this one, sir, because I'm almost pretty positive how you're going to answer this question. Just remember where we engage with the ROs, and we're at I'm going to say the front line trace, and we're hearing exactly what they're telling us. So, and it's sometimes in conflict from what we're hearing from leadership. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that question, and I'll start and then again pass on to the NWQ chief.
I'm not going to let you off the hook.
But
Again there, Mr. Clark, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Here's what happens. The National Work Queue, again, distributes work.
Yes, sir.
So by age. And what we've got is a situation where when there's an avoidable deferral, that deferral then is sent back. It is a mistake that is made by a particular person. And again, it should have been avoided. That's why it's called an avoidable deferral. So we route those back to the individual that made the error. Now, our quality review staffs take all of those errors that are done at a particular RO, as well as it goes back to our comp service, and that is rolled up, and it is then used to provide better training. So that phenomenon that you speak of is happening for all employees to get the training or the results of the errors that are made by individuals. We do take those errors and, again, push them back into training for VBA. Mr. Smith.
My time's actually up, sir. I'm going to we'll revisit that in the second line of questioning. Mr. Pappas, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by recognizing the great work that our VBA employees do day in and day out to assist our veterans. Sometimes we look at statistics, but I know that these VBA employees that work directly with veterans don't see them as numbers. They see them as human beings, and they do incredible work to make sure they get the help that they need and deserve. Mr. Clark, you mentioned in your testimony that National Work Queue prioritizes veterans whose claims are the oldest, but we heard from VA OIG recently in a report last month where a senior VBA employee said that age is just a guideline, not a rule. So I'm wondering if you could clarify that. What priority does National Work Queue give to backlog claims, especially in relation to new specialized or packed presumptive claims?
We do we do prioritize all of our work. And first in, first out is what we typically use to determine what work is given to regional offices. There are times, such as when cases are terminal, such as if we have financial hardship, we have exceptions to those rules, and certain cases then go to the front of the line.
But can you comment on the issue of age and whether age gets priority or whether that's just a guideline that the oldest claims get worked on first?
Well, it is a priority, and that's that first in, first out is the acknowledgement to age. Our guiding principle is to work the oldest case that comes into our inventory. However, there are times when the age of the case does not take the preeminent priority for all work that's being done.
Let me move to another area, character of discharge determinations. To my knowledge, these determinations are initiated automatically once a veteran submits their claim and are completed by the same VSRs that assess benefits claims. Could you clarify, are character of discharge determinations routed through the National Work Queue, or is the eligibility determination completed separately before the claim reaches the work queue?
Thank you for the question, sir. Those are handled by the National Work Queue, and they can come in through one of two different directions. One is with an original claim. We will make that character of discharge determination based on military records and information from the veteran. The second avenue is a referral from VHA for healthcare purposes. So they will present to the hospital. The hospital will not be able to establish eligibility based on their character of discharge and will ask us for a determination. We do both. All of those claims are managed by the National Work Queue.
So these discharge determinations require a fundamentally different experience than benefits claims, I would imagine. And would you agree that character of discharge determinations would be a good candidate for specialization?
I would say that they are very much part of our training background for all of our veteran service representatives. I think that all of them need to understand basic eligibility criteria for VA benefits, and all of them are trained to do that.
But not carved out specifically as an area of specialization?
I would have to look at that, but I think based on the volume, they are probably better handled by a larger workforce, so that we can ensure that we keep those claims moving. I should say, though, they are specialized at 9 regional offices when we receive them through the hospital, which is our biggest intake point.
Okay. We've repeatedly heard from frontline VBA employees that one unintended consequence of deferrals within the national work queue is that VSRs and RVSRs are duplicating the work that's already been done by their colleagues. So duplicated work means that for every claim completed, there may be several VA employees that don't receive performance credit for the work that they've done on these claims. So what's preventing VBA from finding a solution here? One example could be to make prior assignment routing logic the default so a single regional office maintains accountability for a claim if possible. But can you comment on this credit issue?
I'm unaware of duplicate or redundant work. I would have to see some examples and would happy to have further discussion about that. I would say that in terms of routing claims back to the last employee, we have logic already established for that, and we're looking to refine that to ensure that we route it back to the last person that actually produced work that moved the claim forward.
Well, thanks for those responses. Look forward to continuing the conversation. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Babs. Mr. Self, you recognize, sir, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up on that because the committee tells us that multiple VSRs might handle any particular claim. Why do you even allow, because redundancy is the key point here, I think, and apparently every VSR handles it without deference to any previous VSR action. If that is correct, redundancy is built into this, because that suggests to me that every time a new VSR handles a claim, they start over from ground zero. So if that is the case, I think that we have a major fundamental infrastructure issue here with not only allowing, but directing this redundancy. Why do you pass it to multiple VSRs? First question.
So the national work queue is designed to send it back to the last person that touched the claim. We have logic that's built in both at the national level to send it back to the last regional office, and we have local logic that allows those claims to go back to the last person that touched it. All employees that touch a claim are expected to perform all necessary actions to move it to the next stage. So if that happens, the claim should move forward and continue down the process. Avoidable deferrals or mistakes, as Mr. Clark referred to them earlier, sometimes happen. It will come back from the more senior employee, and it should be routed back to that same person to make sure that they learn from those mistakes and can make that right decision.
Let's go to the avoidable deferrals. Do you keep track of how many avoidable deferrals any individual VSR has?
Yes, that data is available.
That data is available, so you have people that make more mistakes than other people.
Yes.
Now, how in the world, if multiple VSRs and only the last VSR, the last VSR is going to be corrected, what are you going to put in place so that every VSR can learn from their mistakes?
I would say that the quality mechanism is in place to do just that. We have a separate quality mechanism that looks at the individual work of each employee as a sample. And as those errors are identified, there is interaction with the quality review specialist as well as the supervisor to provide feedback and mentoring to those employees.
So Next question is, how many VSRs, order of magnitude, how many VSRs work every avoidable deferral claim? You got an idea?
One avoidable deferral is worked by one VSR.
No, I mean, because we know, we are told that multiple VSRs might work an avoidable referral. So on average, for an avoidable deferral, how many VSRs actually work them? 1, 2, 3, 5?
If a claim is deferred back, it goes to a single employee to correct and then move forward.
That's not what the committee staff is telling us. They said, in fact, it is rare. Over the lifetime of a claim, many VSRs may defer a claim. That's what I'm trying to get at. What's the order of magnitude here that we're dealing with?
If I can chime in here, claims don't come in just one issue at a time. You will have upwards of 20, 30, 40, 50 issues or more. And if multiple exams are ordered, what has to happen is that as these exams come back, and what we want to do in VBA is get the benefits out. That's what we're supposed to be doing, not waiting until the claim is ready in its totality for all 50 or 30 or whatever issues. So as a result of that, when that claim goes back, when multiple sets of evidence comes back, then that claim is looked at by different people.
Actually, Mr. Clark, I think I'm talking about an avoidable deferral. How many VSRs work each and every avoidable deferral? That's my question. If you need to get back to me, I would appreciate it, because the committee staff is under impression that many VSRs could work an avoidable deferral, because I think this redundancy is a major part of the problem. Not going back to a single VSR and the redundancy that we have built in, if there's no deference to the previous work, I think that could be a major part of the infrastructure issue here. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Zoll. Mr. McGarvey here, recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the comments from everyone today. Mr. Clark, these issues we're discussing today have a devastating impact on veterans and their families. Claims that require special handling are getting caught in a system that is not equipped to manage the complex reviews necessary. And as you know, the process itself, as well as staffing shortages, cause extreme delays. And I just want to highlight a few of the things we've dealt with in the last year and a half in my office. There's one veteran in my district who filed a military sexual trauma case in February of 2023, requesting a higher level review after a previous denial. 2 months later, she received a response from the VA stating they'd found a, quote, duty to assist error. But there's been no contact from the VA since then. And that was more than a year ago. So when our office reached out to the VA, we learned that her claim is being processed at, quote, the Decision Review Operations Center that specializes in military sexual trauma cases, and that her claim is still in the decision phase awaiting distribution, quote, when capacity allows. More than a year. Another veteran submitted a disability claim after experiencing a stroke. He hasn't heard anything back from the VA in 8 months. Another veteran we were assisting in Kentucky, he submitted a claim in early 2023 when he was diagnosed with cancer. He was notified of a duty to assist error. Unfortunately, he passed away in February of this year and still has never heard back from the VA. These are the kind of claims we're talking about today. These are the issues with the process itself, with the distribution of the claims back and forth between the NWQ division, the VBA regional offices, and there are problems with the incentive structure for the veteran service representatives as reviews are being completely restarted when a federal deferral has been made because of representatives that may be penalized for mistakes made in previous stages of development. So, Mr. Clark, my question is, what is the VA doing today to address these problems and mitigate these inefficiencies, especially considering the recommendations of the VBA Red Team? And could you provide a concrete update on those recommendations? For example, the timeline on fulfilling each of those recommendations.
We're doing several things. First, we just had a quality stand-down day where we, rather than rating claims, we took a look at all of the errors that we were making. You know, being forthcoming here, obviously, we don't get it right all the time. When you rate or you make 2.4 million decisions in a year, then some of them will not be right. But we understand, and we keep foremost in our minds, that our purpose is to serve veterans because decisions make changes in their lives. So our Quality Stand-Down Day, we use to do just that. We wanted to find out what errors are being made, and we provided training that entire day. We did wellness training for 2 hours, and the other 6, we provided training on mistakes being made. We will continue that process. That was our down payment, our first time we've ever not produced ratings, with the benefit expectation that we'll discern what errors we are making, develop additional and better training products, and then provide that training back to regional offices. So this was a joint VA central office, regional office endeavor, and it was successful, very successful. And again, our efforts here are to continue to improve upon what we're doing.
Thank you. And I appreciate your acknowledging the errors, and I appreciate you stating the desire to improve. That's something we all share. Just because of the limited time we have here today, I'm going to ask you my next question, but do want to continue to hear from you all on what you need to make sure these veterans are getting what they need from the VA. My next question is going to be, the VSOs and AFGE are here today to offer testimony as well. And they're explicitly advocating for more special mission regional offices, like the one processing Camp Lejeune water contamination claims in Louisville, Kentucky, to manage the claims that require this type of special handling. What is the VA's response to those views?
Our response is we do specialized training. As the VSOs mentioned. MST, I gave an example of military sexual trauma. We discern the receipts, the amount of incoming claims coming in, and we need to keep our requisite indices at a point that represents outstanding service to the folks that make it possible for us to live in this great country. However, having said that, we have a lot of work as a result of the PACT initiative, which we appreciate Congress passing that bill and giving us the monies and funding to take care of that. We've hired a lot of people, and what we're doing is funding these special missions and putting the amount of resources in there to make sure that we provide optimum service for veterans and their survivors and dependents.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thanks, sir. The machine, the National Work Queue, it's moving forward as best it can. I want you guys are doing a great job. Okay, and I understand, and I say this quite often in here. I mean, it's a very extremely heavy rucksack you guys are carrying, and the committee here is kind of pointing out a few things that we're trying to thread this needle from what we're hearing from everyone inside the organization to the leadership. That there seems to be like a hinge point or a choke point or a bottleneck because what you're saying, Mr. Smith, is that the system is designed to bring the information back to the originator of the file. That's not what we're hearing. We're also hearing that, the VSOs, sometimes they don't have enough work and they're sitting idly by, while other VSOs are saying, hey, we're overwhelmed. I think there's for more or less maybe a glitch in the matrix somewhere. We're trying to figure out exactly what that looks like. Because our concern is, one, is that the individuals aren't receiving information if they have made a mistake, if it progresses up to multiple VSOs. Because I got to say, I more or less hear that multiple VSOs touch a single package more than one individual touches a package from start to finish. But that kind of conflicts what you guys are telling us today. You kind of help me out on this one, Mr. Smith?
So it is possible that more than one veteran service representative will touch a single claim.
VSR, excuse me, I'm sorry, not VSO, VSR.
From start to finish. That is true. We prioritize returning claims to the last regional office that touched that claim, so that they can use local rules to route it back to the last VSR that touched the claim. However, if that VSR doesn't have capacity, it has to go to someone. So what we were trying
Who
to...
makes the decision? Is it a supervisor's decision to move packets back down inside to the VSRs? It is, correct?
Yes, the division level and frontline supervisors have the ability to leverage automated rules or to make that decision.
Supervisor could make the decision to not push that back down inside the organization and send it out into what we most certainly would call the metaverse or the NWQ?
No, they would have to send it back to another employee at their regional office.
It won't leave the regional office and go to another regional office somewhere in the United States? I think that happens.
Once it's been assigned to an office for action, it is that office's responsibility to take full and appropriate action to move that claim forward.
Until completion or until it moves?
Until they've fully developed the claim, and then it would be recalled to the NWQ to wait for that evidence request to come back.
And then if that happens, it may not necessarily go back down to Houston. Give me a little rope here. It may not go down to Houston, it'll go to Ohio, or could possibly.
Could possibly. If there's not capacity at that regional office that touched it, it could go to another place.
Okay.
Because we're trying to make sure that we're sequencing these claims to get the fastest decision possible for a veteran.
Should it go back to the original office from start to finish? Having discussions, it seems like they're almost having to start the process completely over if it leaves a regional office. And these are discussions I'm having with my particular office where I come from. And I'm not saying it's not effective means of moving these packets. Again, I'm not trying to wire brush you here. I'm just trying to continue to increase the national work queue in a way that, hey, we don't have outstanding numbers. We're down to 0, and with no mistakes. That's a grandiose statement. Just hear me out on that one, okay?
There's no shortage of work right now, sir. We will push claims back whenever possible to the last regional office that touched it. But again, like if they don't have the ability to take that claim because they're already, over their 3.5 days worth of work on site, then it will go to another site.
And that's a supervisor's call.
No, well, that's part of the NWQ logic, if it's coming from NWQ down.
Okay. Mr. Pappas? Thank you.
Thank you. I won't keep on that issue, but I share the chairman's concerns there, and think we've got a system that's, obviously quite complicated given the nature of the work, but that there is duplication and inefficiency here that, we should continue to take a look at. I want to ask about one specific issue, and it was raised in the VA OIG report, which identified over 10,000 specialized herbicide-related claims that were ready for a decision, but instead we're stuck in the National Work Queue Division. And committee staff continues to hear about this issue despite corrections that have been made in response to the report. So can you talk about specific actions that have been taken out of the Office of Field Operations to improve these rule sets, and what progress you think has been made, what work needs to continue to be done?
So the work that was identified by the OIG audit was related to the 2019 Blue Water Navy Act, as well as the National Defense Authorization Act that added new Agent Orange-related disabilities. VBA at the onset knew that we were going to have to re-adjudicate, I think, about 140,000 claims, and we dedicated about a quarter of our workforce to doing just that. We knew that we would develop, that it would take time to work through this massive workload that was identified on one single day. But we also knew that we had to continue providing benefits and services to people filing normal claims each and every day. So that's why we fenced off 25% of our workforce. We communicated that to the court as well as to all of our stakeholders, and we've made good progress. We've resolved all of those claims. We continue to receive some new claims, but we continue to get them worked as quickly as we can.
So the 10,000 that were mentioned in the report, those have all been resolved?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And there are additional claims that continue to be processed, through under the same circumstances?
Correct. On that basis for, as new veterans and survivors identify claims based on Blue Water Navy service or the 3 new Agent Orange presumptives.
Okay. Well, we will certainly bring you specific examples if we do still have some pending, but appreciate your attention to those. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. West. Mr. Self, you're recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I've listened to, just real quickly, as I've listened to all the comments about the redundant work, it looks to me like we might have multiple ROs for any single claim. We might have multiple VSRs for any single claim, and we might have multiple RVSRs for any single claim. So I just share my colleagues' comments with, it looks inefficient. I want to go to MST's backlog. You consolidated back in November of 2023, right, in Puerto Rico?
Yes, sir.
The backlog looks to be growing by basically several hundred per month over the 6 months between October and April. And then in April of this year, you designated 225 out of 478 FTEs at Roanoke to help process. My first question is, from a managerial standpoint, were those 225 people gainfully employed before you redesignated them? And since you've redesignated them, what has fallen through the cracks of what they previously did? Or were they gainfully employed?
They were gainfully employed.
So what's fallen through the cracks now that you've redesignated them to work on MSTs?
Well, MST claims are part and parcel of the general population of claims. So we're working all of those claims. It's not
No,
a separate
what were they,
subset.
Mr. Clark?
Yes,
What
sir.
were they doing before you put them on to MSTs, and what is falling through the cracks? Because 225 is a significant workforce across all of VA, I would submit. So I fail to see how you have taken 225 employees out of some function, put them toward MSTs, and something is not suffering.
Our backlog is being reduced. You made a comment which was spot on when you mentioned that the inventory in MST had been going up.
Right.
We were not meeting receipts. Receipts were coming in faster than the output.
Right.
And while we don't like for that to happen, it was a result of a couple of things. Just like in the general population of claims, we crested at a particular point in receipts, and we used overtime, mandatory overtime, to assist us in exceeding the receipts, thus lowering the backlog. So right now in MST, we've actually crested, and the inventory is going down, just like it's going down in the rest of the remaining cases. We realize we have a lot of work. This is why we're producing 2.4 million, and we have exceeded, on pace to exceed that again this year.
Okay, so a simple question, let's simplify this. What were these 225 FTEs doing before they got assigned to MSTs?
They were working the remaining, they were part of the 2.4 million claims that we had worked for the year, which are part of that general number of claims. So I understand your question. It's as if they are now, what they are not doing is working, the remaining portion of that 2.4 million, but keep in mind, sir, we are hiring new individuals every month. Mm-hmm. We're training new individuals, and we're working overtime to make up for the work they are not doing with the regular output of claims.
Right. So you peaked at 600,000. What is your backlog, total backlog today in WQ?
So the total rating claims inventory backlog right now is about 278,000. That's as of the end of May.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Self. That's down. What was the number at the start of the year? I'm sorry, Mr. McGarvey. I'm jumping from you real quick.
That was in excess of
400,
400,000.
400, now it's
Yes.
down to 200, okay.
Yes, so we are, again, going back to your question, sir, the inventory is going down across NVBA.
You good? Okay. You good? Okay. Mr. Clark, Mr. Smith, thank you for your time. You're excused. Second panel, you are welcome to join us, please. You guys ready? Outstanding. Thank you for coming today. I'll introduce our second panel, Mr. Herman Brewer, Policy Director of the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers, Ms. Ashlyn Haycock-Lohman, Deputy Director of, I got it right? All right. Deputy Director of Government Legislative Affairs at the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, and Mr. James Swartz, President Local 2823 American Federation of Government Employees. I ask that you all please stand. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Mr. Brewer, you're now recognized 5 minutes, sir, for your opening remarks.
Distinguished members of the subcommittee, the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers, commonly referred to as NACVSO, thanks you for the opportunity to provide testimony before you today, as well as for your time and your dedication to improving the benefits for the men and women who have worn our nation's uniform. I'm here today to bring to your attention some opportunities for refinement as it pertains to the claims adjudication process. As you're all aware, and I'm happy to attest, the VA claim process has been significantly reduced with the implementation of the NWQ. But further efficiency can be achieved by enhancing collaboration between VA representatives and the Veterans Advocate to expedite the collection of necessary information and evidence. I'm an Army veteran of the Iraq War. I was wounded by an IED in March of 2004. My personal experience with VA came at a time when documents were reviewed on paper rather than electronically. The initial development of my own claim took approximately 14 months, primarily to the delays caused by the location of my medical records within the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. A year after returning home, I became a veteran service officer. Delays in the disability process were evident, particularly during the development phase, and I'd like to emphasize that. At that time, the VA would issue a development letter called the VCAA Notice Response, similar to today's 5103 notice. This letter allowed veterans to declare whether they had submitted all of their evidence or needed an additional 30 days to gather more. The regional office would only send this letter after opening the mail and beginning to build the file, a process that often took 60 days. If the veteran did not reply promptly, they would then issue another letter, 30-day response time, perpetuating a cycle that could extend the claim development phase up to 12 to 18 months. And that is an extra year plus before veterans could even attend a compensation and pension exam. As an advocate at that time, we submitted the claims by U.S. mail or fax, and then we waited. These delays were frustrating, especially when telling veterans or their dependents to be patient, many of whom had just returned from Walter Reed, where they were literally patients just being patient. The practice of transferring files from busier ROs to less busy ones helped reduce workloads, but continued to add delays, the transfer process taking a minimum of 30 days to complete. The National Work Queue was introduced to address these types of issues. While it was initially met with skepticism from advocates who feared losing the personal touch of knowing the right people in their RO, which can be very helpful to the advocate. Personally, I welcomed the NWQ as I fielded hundreds of calls each month from veterans and dependents inquiring about the status of their claim. The NWQ, combined with the fully developed claim process, led to noticeable reductions in wait times. Now that the NWQ has been standard operating procedure for the last 8 years, we can provide an honest assessment. The NWQ system is a solid improvement, but I know we can make it better. To optimize this system, it is crucial to truly partner with the advocates on the ground. If a veteran service representative or a rating veteran service representative sees that a claim requires additional information or evidence, they should first work together with the veteran and then the veteran's accredited representative to obtain that information expediently. Currently, a phone call or email will be sent to the veteran alone. And if they don't respond immediately, the claim is returned to the NWQ for an additional 30 days. In the past, the VA was shuffling paper and files manually. Today, the shuffle still occurs, but it's digitally. Seeing this happen as an advocate can be extremely frustrating. Unfortunately, there are incentives in the current system to kick the claim back to the NWQ because there are no risks to following the procedure to the letter. The unfortunate outcome is that this often leads to unnecessary delays in benefits to a veteran who may desperately need them. By adding contact between VSRs, RVSRs, and a veteran's accredited representative as a required step within the development procedure, we will empower those with the greatest understanding of the claim to collaborate on behalf of the veteran. This will also discourage delays in the claim development, all while making that personal touch to the NWQ that detractors were initially so worried about. In conclusion, while the NWQ has brought about many improvements, fostering a collaborative relationship between VA and veteran advocates will further enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the claim process, minimizing delays and ensuring that veterans receive the benefits that they deserve in the timeliest manner possible. Chairman, ranking member, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to share your input from the field regarding the issues before the panel today. We look forward to your continued work together, and we would be happy to take any questions for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The written statement of Mr. Brewer will be entered into the hearing record. Ms. Haycock-Loman, your opening statement. You have 5 minutes.
Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member Pappas, and distinguished committee members. The Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors is grateful for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the over 120,000 surviving family members of all ages, representing all services, and with losses from all causes who we are honored to serve. TAPS appreciates the committee for holding this important hearing, as challenges with the national work queue are one of the biggest pain points in the survivor community. The most crucial is for our surviving children. If a surviving child turns 18 before graduating high school, dependency and indemnity compensation should be paid to the child through high school graduation. This is not happening. TAPS has consistently raised this issue with the VA over the past 5 years. Unfortunately, the VA has yet to develop a way to process these claims in a timely manner, leading to 18 months and longer delays in payments for these students. These should be easy supplemental claims, but every child has experienced a delay in payment due to the lack of a reasonable process. The biggest challenge is that instead of these forms automatically dropping into the national work queue, they disappear into a file and have to be manually placed into the NWQ for processing. Many of these surviving children give up after years of trying and never receive the back pay they are owed. In addition, not only is DIC supposed to be paid until a child graduates high school, they should receive DIC for the months between graduating and starting college. Despite this being the law, students are rarely paid during those summer months. This is happening during an incredibly financially difficult time for our surviving families, when costs for graduation, college applications, deposits, and other costs are incurring. VA has put forward a proposal to address both issues by updating VA Form 21-674 to allow both the child and parent to sign, as well as an option for students to acknowledge that they will be using education benefits the following semester. Their expected timeline on that updated form is 18 to 24 months from the January oversight hearing. At that point, they intend to look at the larger problem, the fact that these forms do not automatically drop into the national work queue. TAPS recommends a process for students to submit a single school certification form that will generate into the NWQ. Additionally, the VA's Education Services should be required to notify the Pension Management Center of a surviving child enrollment in education benefits. Most importantly, TAPS highly recommends that the Office of Field Operations prioritize the fix to automatically drop these claims into the national work queue. TAPS also has concerns about the current wait times we are seeing for initial claims for DIC. We have seen cases where the processing time is over a year for an initial claim. We are also concerned that the response our team is receiving from VA has generally been along the lines of, "We are backlogged." A case example of this is a Navy Vietnam veteran who died in June of 2023 from COPD as a result of Agent Orange exposure. His surviving spouse applied for accrued benefits in DIC in September 2023. In December, she received a request for additional information, as they did not have him listed as having deployed to Vietnam. The surviving spouse immediately provided the relevant information. TAPS reached out to the VA for an update on the status of the claim in February 2024 and received a response on April 8th. At that time, TAPS was informed that there had been no movement on the claim. TAPS followed up on May 6th and again on June 6th, where it was confirmed that claims processing was quite behind and that processing for many Agent Orange claims for non-Vietnam boots on the ground in littoral waters are temporarily suspended. We understand that many of these DIC cases are incredibly complicated due to challenges such as contributing factors not being listed on death certificates, but the delays leave surviving families in financial hardship in the interim. Additionally, because the backlog is so high at the Philadelphia regional office, where most of the DIC claims are processed, they've been sending them to Milwaukee, who appears to be ill-equipped to handle them. We have seen several letters that were erroneous due to the backlog. One example is a letter that stated denied service connection on the first page, but all subsequent pages stated that the service connection was approved. VA did later confirm that the death was ruled service connected and that the letter was erroneous due to human processing error. VA has confirmed that they have hired 35 new veteran service representatives and 25 new rating veteran service representatives that should be fully trained in August. We are hopeful that this will fix the backlog in Philadelphia. In conclusion, while we appreciate VA sharing these updates, our biggest challenge has been and still is a lack of updated timelines. We know that the additional staff will help decrease wait times and clear the backlog, but an updated timeline would help TAPS and survivors better manage expectations for such critical benefits. We thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, ma'am. The written statement of Ms. Haycock-Loman will be entered into the hearing record. Mr. Schwartz, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your opening statement.
Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the subcommittee. On behalf of AFGE and the NVAC, I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. My name is James Schwartz, and I am president of AFGE Local 2823, representing the Cleveland, Ohio VBA Regional Office. I'm a U.S. Army service-connected disabled veteran and have had the privilege of continuing to serve my fellow veterans, first as a registered nurse at the Cleveland VA and then in VBA for the last 23 years. On behalf of the 304,000 VA employees AFGE represents, including thousands of claims processors, it is a privilege to offer AFGE's views on the national work queue and how VBA can better utilize this tool to serve veterans. I also want to personally thank Chairman Luttrell and Ranking Member Pappas for attending the AFGE VBA Roundtable in February of this year, listening to the frontline employees, and holding today's hearing. Before the national work queue, each regional office sorted claims into an efficiency lane, regular lane, and special operation lane. AFGE agrees with the IG's 2018 conclusion that VBA's decision to eliminate specialization of claims processing had harmed veterans with more complex claims. VBA has heeded those recommendations and created several special operations centers, allowing claims processors to repeatedly use their nuanced experience and expertise on certain complex claims, benefiting veterans with these conditions. AFGE encourages VBA to identify additional complex claims suitable for special operations centers. Though VBA should reestablish the efficiency and moderate lanes, an efficiency lane provides newer claims processors a chance to hone their skills and gain experience. Also, the veteran will not have to wait in line behind more complex claims and receive benefits sooner. Within these lanes, there should be a first-in, first-out system to ensure that veterans of all complexity levels receive timely benefits. VA should modify the national work queue so that the claim remains within the same regional office for the duration of its processing. Variations between regional offices can cause claims processors from different regional offices to misunderstand each other's work and result in correct claim being unnecessarily deferred. Furthermore, by keeping a claim in a single regional office, managers have more control to send claims back to the original VSR who worked on it. This would allow VSRs to learn from the error and not repeat it, especially because the employees are responsible for any error that occurred prior to them receiving it. This would also let the VSR and RVSR who are already familiar with the claim quickly address follow-up work, saving other employees from using time to familiarize themselves with a new claim. Despite the claims backlog, one of the most consistent complaints from claims processors is that they are not assigned enough work to meet their performance metrics and must wait time asking for more work. The reason for this problem is the internal controls VBA has put on the National Work Queue. To address this, AFGE recommends, first, the National Work Queue should automatically provide claims to an individual claims processor's work queue when they are out of cases to develop a rate. Second, claims processors should have the limited ability to temporarily hold on to a claim before it is retracted by the National Work Queue. Claims processors would benefit from the National Work Queue notifying them on how much longer they have to work on a claim before the claim is retracted. Having a claim stay within one regional office for restoration would avoid delays and give ROs more control over their workload. Third, the National Work Queue must better filter automatically ready-to-rate cases, ensuring employees do not waste time on cases that the National Work Queue can determine are still not ready to rate. Fourth, VBA should program the National Work Queue so employees who have previously worked on a claim have claims returned to them. This would allow claims processors to learn from any mistakes that were previously made and improve efficiency. Each veteran's claim could have many contentions, not necessarily related to each other. Often, some contentions are developed and ready to rate prior to other parts. Unfortunately, VBA has an internal metric that awards credit to regional offices only on the claims that are rated and promulgated on all contentions. For example, if a veteran's claim has 10 contentions and 9 can be advanced prior to providing benefits, VBA does not credit ROs for rating almost completed claims. In contrast, individual claim processors are incentivized based on actions taken, not claims completed. The incentives that the ROs and claims processors have should be aligned so that they are working towards the same goal. Otherwise, a claims processor is pressured to complete a claim that may not be ready. AFGE and MVAC stand ready to work with the VA Committee and VBA to fix the National Work Queue to better serve veterans. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, sir. The written statement of Mr. Swartz will be entered into the hearing record. We'll move to questioning. Mr. Swartz, have you had that exact conversation about internal controls with any leadership in the National Work Queue infrastructure?
Thank you for your question. I have had that conversation with multiple levels of VBA leadership, including the director at the Cleveland Regional Office. And, well, as we're sitting here today, a lot of it has not been taken really into consideration.
Who in the organization, let's just say the committee was to have a hearing, and I'm taking the internal controls in that list you just rattled off, who needs to be sit there in front of us to talk to about this?
I believe, sir, the best, thank you for that question. I believe the best answer to that would be Mr. Clark.
Okay. I'm sure Mr. Clark is listening to everything you just said because he's still in the room with us. So next time I'll be curious to see if any of those internal controls have been moved left or right of center. They seem to be viable, in my opinion. And when it comes from your organizations and you all, I mean, you're the ones that are getting dirty. So it seems like it would be a good win. Ms. Haycock-Lungman, with the age limit on the coming out of high school, what is the pushback and why? And okay, so I've been trying, when you said that, I've been trying to play this out in my head. And believe it or not, I graduated high school with a guy that was 20. And I'm, from the South Texas area, we kind of stretch it out a little bit. We like to do that. But what's the give or take on this one? Why is it 18 and you're done? Because I get that, but play this out for me.
So we understand all benefits generally end at age 18, reaching majority, and that's about the age most children graduate high school. I graduated at 17, my brother graduated at 19, but kind of in that age range. But what we're seeing is that they can't figure out whose issue this is. So Pension and Fiduciary has said it's an Office of Field Operations issue. OFO just told us that it's a policy issue.
So there's an argument between two organizations trying to figure out who's supposed to handle it.
Correct.
And that just keeps going back and forth?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm assuming we have those names that we'll address that for you. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Brewer, it's almost the same question as I asked Mr. Schwartz. In your opening testimony, the information you provided, is the receiving end of that conversation, are they receptive of what you're saying?
We've addressed that at the highest levels.
What is, okay,
At Secretary.
the secretary, Mr.
The
McDonough?
secretary, yeah.
Okay, and Mr. McDonough is always very open-eared and wide-eyed when he's in front of us. I'm gonna just make the assumption that he received that very well.
Absolutely, yes.
So should I make the assumption, which I normally don't do, that once it goes down inside the organization is where it hits friction points?
I would think that's correct. Yep.
Okay? Interesting. Mr. Pappas, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your testimony. I think you contribute greatly to this discussion. Mr. Schwartz, maybe I can start with you. I think you gave us some terrific ideas that we should be taking a look at and working with VA on here. Is there a top priority that you can name that will help us address the effectiveness of the National Work Queue?
Thank you for that question. Yes, sir, I think the top priority would be that the regional office would receive the claim and keep it through its entirety. I believe that the rationale behind that would be for the relationship between the VSR and the RVSR. If there's a question about some development that was done, it could be answered immediately without having to worry about sending emails or trying to get somebody that perhaps works in a different time zone. And with a lot of that as well, it also gives better control over the workflow within the regional office itself. And while an employee is responsible for any of the errors that are called before them, as an employee, I'd rather be responsible for my own errors and to be able to learn from them so I could correct it and develop as an employee, and also to ensure that the claims are being done as efficiently as possible.
Well, no one knows this work better than you and the other VBA employees, so we're grateful for that suggestion. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on the benefits of specialization in claims processing, and if you feel like there are other areas where we should move towards special missions.
Thank you. The specialization, I believe, is very important if they were to keep the different lanes. For instance, the MST claims you have certain areas that you have to go to get the information, certain things that need to be addressed specifically for development of that claim or that type of claim. And if you have specialized areas that are doing it, they're more familiar with it and less likely to make developmental errors. And that would allow for employees to move quicker and also for greater accuracy in those decisions. The same would go for the Blue Water Navy or any of the other claims that there are in specialized lanes. As far as it goes with any of the other things that need to be specialized, at this point, that may be a little bit further than I'm able to answer at this time, but I'm more than happy to look into it and follow up with your office.
Terrific, thank you. I've heard a great deal about the production quotas, Mr. Schwartz, from workers in the regional office in my district, but also from that roundtable discussion we had with VBA employees. It creates an environment that incentivizes regional offices to prioritize throughput over quality in some circumstances. Is that a concern of yours? Are you seeing that? And what recommendations would you have with respect to production quotas?
Thank you for that question. And I believe that, yes, that is a very big concern that we have as employees and also for the union as well. When they have certain, as I mentioned earlier, the regional offices have metrics of claims completed per month. As a result of this, often less complex claims are moved to the head of the list so that they can increase their production. This usually occurs during the overtime, where I've been told that the rationale behind that was a greater bang for the buck. My response to that was, we're not a business. We're a federal government agency. We don't have investors. We have constituents. And all veterans deserve to be treated fairly and equally despite the number of claims that they may have. So I do think that is used by the regional offices to meet self-imposed metrics from either CEO or from the office itself.
Mr. Brewer, would you agree that the production quotas, create some different incentives and that affect the performance of the national work queue?
Absolutely. What I see is that, when we're looking at the claims through VBMS and we're working remotely out there with the boots on the ground and we're watching in real time as that claim gets processed, we are painfully watching a claim get returned to the NWQ for some piece of evidence that was missing. That's why we're asking for more cooperation from the VA with the veterans advocates on the ground, because that could have been taken care of immediately, either by phone call, email, whatever medium that they chose. We could have given that information and avoided that extending the life of that claim.
Great. Thank you. I'm out of time, so I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. Mr. Self, sir, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For each of you, what do you think the percentage of backlog is reasonable? Percentage of the total claims, backlog of total claims over the year. What's a percentage?
In my opinion, I would say maybe 10%. That may even be too high. I don't see why we have the backlog that we have.
I would say probably no more than 5%, but once again, we don't see any reason why there should be a backlog.
Thank you for the question. I would actually think that the backlog itself, and this is going to sound a little bit backwards, the backlog shouldn't be the major concern. It's the timeliness that it takes to get the claim from beginning to end is where it needs to be, the efforts need to be concentrated. As a veteran, I actually think that the backlog, as long as things continue to move appropriately, means that the VA is actually reaching out to more and more veterans, and more veterans are applying for the benefits that they deserve.
Okay, so it looks to me, if I heard Mr. Clark right, we're at about 10% right now. And I think for anyone to have that. So, Mr. Schwartz, I want to read from your written testimony. Now, understand who Mr. Schwartz is. He is the president of a local union. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
So, and I quote from your written testimony, despite a claims backlog that has significantly grown following the enactment of the PACT Act, one of the most shocking yet consistent complaints from claims processors is that they are not assigned enough work to meet their performance metrics and must frequently ask their coaches for more claims to work on. Mr. Schwartz, why is that in your written testimony?
Thank you for that question. The reason that's in my written testimony is because the way the National Work Queue works, if you have not been able to address a claim quick enough within the 3 days or whenever it was put into your queue, there's a certain amount of time. The National Work Queue will pull it back into the void. A lot of times they will do that at the end of the day. So often you will have the people who promulgate or complete the claim itself, cut the check, so to speak, will not have work in the morning because anything that was already made completed will go back, and then the National Work Queue will redistribute that work in the morning, which is one of the reasons I think if you keep the work at the regional office from beginning to end, you could avoid a lot of that problem.
My point, and I think we need to explore this because I think that's a major issue, and I will be putting in a question for the record. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Self. Mr. McGarvey, you're recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you all being here today. And I think regardless of where things come out, what you see is we need to do everything in our power to ensure that all of our veterans' claims are processed accurately and efficiently. And of course, that means without delay. I appreciate your testimony to this committee so that we may better understand what steps need to be taken to improve the system. Ms. Haycock-Lohman, in your testimony, you suggest the VA increase the number of special mission regional offices to manage the development, rating, and promulgation of claims that require special handling. I understand VA did operate this way prior to the National Work Queue. which was designed to improve the efficiency of all claims. But given the specific expertise required for special mission claims, the VBA has been bringing them back. So my question is, I'm curious what you think are the risks and benefits of implementing these specialty offices. Under the NWQ system, the special mission claims are delayed when there's a lack of specific expertise needed to complete the development and rating these claims. But then when there's a specific team with that particular expertise, claims may be delayed due to staffing shortages on those teams. So just truly asking you, what's the right balance?
I don't know if that was specifically in our testimony, but where we've seen specialization work very, very well has been the Philadelphia office, where they handle an overwhelming majority of DIC claims. And claims that are straightforward move very quickly. If it's very straightforward, if everything is in the file to begin with, we see turnaround oftentimes for an initial claim in 3 to 9 months. Where we see issues is these less straightforward claims. So issues with things like the death certificate stating the cause of death as heart failure, but that heart failure was caused by cancer, or as they were declining, something along those lines, and the coroner's office is not putting those on the death certificates. And so the extra steps of having to prove that. But we have found that having those cases very specialized has helped at least increase the process. But of course, we do see a major backlog right now in those processes because they are understaffed. Though VA has assured us that they have hired about 55 new BSRs and RVSRs that are expected to start July 1st and be fully operational by August.
Thank you. And you know, sometimes up here we ask questions to make a point. Sometimes we ask questions to get answers. I'm truly interested in the answers of these questions. And Mr. Schwartz, I'll go to you next. Thank you for your service. What are your thoughts on the risks and benefits of implementing more specialized offices?
As far as the risk of more specialized offices, I think that it's a very low risk. The more specialized offices we have, as I had mentioned in the testimony, that the different nuances for the development of specialized areas would be a lot more efficient if you have people who are used to doing it and know what tools and where to go for the information. I could only see it benefiting. The slightest risk that I could see is if everything is specialized, then the less or non-specialized claims, you only have so many employees. And even with the PACT Act, we have a lot of employees that came on who have really little experience at this point. But the more people that are pulling the different carts in different directions, it's going to leave less employees to handle more generalized claims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you to all the witnesses for testifying for us today about the important issues of ensuring that the National Work Queue accomplishes the goal and timely processing of all types of veterans and survivors' claims, and ensuring that the National Work Queue allows VA employees to learn from their mistakes when developing claims. With that, I yield to the ranking member for any closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this session. I thank all of our witnesses for their testimony. Clearly, this is an issue where I think we've received some important feedback that we have to continue to dig in on. But I just want to thank all those who assist veterans, all our VA workers, for what they do each and every day. We've got to make sure that the systems that are in place ultimately are serving our end veterans in the best way possible, the most efficient way possible, and that we're rewarding those who are doing this work. So I think we've got some constructive feedback that we can get to work on here, and look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, on some improvements. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. Thank you all for joining us, Mr. Clark, Mr. Smith. Again, thank you for taking the time today. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. Without objection, so ordered. Meeting is adjourned.